Okay, I think we'll get started. I'm expecting quite a few more to join and I'll start adding them as they come along. So welcome to the Helix webinar series. Today's session is on Ask the Experts, Helix Discovery. So this is a very different way of doing webinars. Most of you may already have been to different webinars where we talk about specific topics. Although we've got a couple of areas we might cover today, it's very much in the hands of the audience. So do get your questions ready, and I can see we've already got one in the Q&A, so thank you, Saga. We will spend the next hour or up to the next hour answering your questions, and if there is anything that you would like to put either in the Q&A section of Zoom, otherwise we will come to you and speak with you also live as well. So to get us started, I'm just going to do an introduction. My name is Samantha Hudson dos Santos Figueira. I work as a Senior Program Manager at BMC Helix, mainly doing the webinars, as I mentioned before. And then we also have these type of sessions or boot camps. So you may have seen my name across different emails and content that we've been sharing out. And joining me with the team today, if we go through the panelists, we've got Adam, if you can introduce yourself first.
Hello, yeah, Adam Kerrison. I'm one of the lead developers on the Discovery product.
Thank you. Andy.
I'm Andy McCall. I'm the Director in charge of Product Development for BMC Helix Discovery.
Duncan.
I'm Duncan Grisby. I am the architect of BMC Helix Discovery.
Brian.
Brian Kaplan, Product Manager of Discovery.
Matt.
Matt Lambie, also Product Manager for Discovery.
Thank you. And Jiva.
Hi, this is Jiva. I'm the Global Support Manager for BMC Discovery.
Wonderful. Thank you. So that's the team that's going to be working with you today. We did actually run a session this morning, so we will share out the blog post with all the questions that came in. So today, whatever we get from your session, we'll share it also with you, both sessions. So I'm now going to get us started because I'm hoping there's going to be a lot of questions. I know something that comes top of my mind and probably a question for yourself, Duncan. We recently covered around deep container discovery, our new feature. I know there's a lot of interest there. Maybe we could start with that and then go to the Q&A.
Thank you, Sam. Yes, the people who've been paying attention to our webinars, you will have noticed that about 3 weeks ago, we did a webinar of one of our big new features, which is deep container discovery. If you're interested in this, there's a recording of that available. You should go back and find it. But we thought it would be useful to give a very brief overview of that, both so that people can see a neat new feature that we've got, but also as a way of seeding further questions on that if people are interested in asking further questions. So I'm sharing my screen. I'm just going to do an extremely quick demo of some of the data we can collect. I'm not going to go into the details of quite exactly how we collect the data and the kind of the things you need to set up in terms of credentials and so on. That's covered in the webinar that we did. There's a whole hour on the topic, but I thought I'd just briefly show what we can do. This, I'm showing a system which is running our 25.2 release. It's slightly complicated if you're a SaaS customer. The features arrive at various different times, but this is also in our on-prem 25.2 release. It has a number of new features. The thing that happens to be on my screen is a thing to do with BGP network discovery, which is not what I'm going to show here, but we can talk about that later if people have questions. What I'm going to talk about is our deep container discovery, where what we're doing is we are extending Discovery's ability that it already had to discover two things. It was already the case that Discovery could make use of Kubernetes APIs to interact with Kubernetes to find out about the setup of your cluster, your namespaces, the deployments, the pods deployed by those deployments, and so on. We've also always had the ability to discover hosts in the sense of compute nodes in a Kubernetes sense that are running software, some of which is running in containers. And of course, you can run containers, not in an orchestrated Kubernetes environment, but just like Docker containers. And Discovery's always, or for a long, long time, has had some kind of identification of containerized software, but now it really fully understands the nature of software running in containers such that it can execute commands, it can retrieve files from inside containers, which it does using various techniques that are covered in the webinar we had before. And then from a data modeling point of view, we construct a new and useful data model on the back of that, and that's what I'm going to show you now. So I'm just going to shortcut things and show something that I looked at recently. So it's in my recent items, which is slow because Zoom is eating all my CPU. So this is a quick visualization of a deployment. So this deployment has been discovered using our API discovery. This is the namespace that deployment is part of. It's a thing called test Odin, and it's running some software to do with Elasticsearch. Now, most of what you can see here is information that is collected by our existing Kubernetes API discovery. I'm going to expand this collection so it will show you the fact that inside this deployment, there happen to be at the moment 3 pods, and each of them is running some Elasticsearch software. Most of this information has come from the API discovery. The thing that's new is, actually in this diagram, there's only one thing that's new. It's this guy. This is a software instance representing Elasticsearch, and you'll notice that it has a version number. It's version 7.10. That has been discovered with our deep container discovery, and it was actually discovered running inside each of the containers. But what we do as part of this overall work is we don't just discover it running in the container, we understand what that means. And now we're representing that this deployment here has deployed the Elasticsearch software. Now, the reason we do that is that this is what we call stable. It's a stable software instance because these pods come and go, that they might scale up, they might scale down, they certainly might well move to other compute nodes in the cluster. And therefore, everything down this side of the world will change, will over time, will come and go. But this guy is going to stay stable for as long as the deployment exists, because this is the effect of the deployment. To extend the demo a little bit, I'm going to add some information about on this same visualization, I'm going to add a view of the contained software. So this is now going to add some extra items to the visualization. In fact, it's hidden that back into a group. So I'm going to expand the group again. So this now, let me fix the layout. This is now showing the same node. It's helpfully moved over here. This is the software instance. And now you can see that we've got these 3 things, which are what we term contained software instances. So these are the software instances that we refer to as being ephemeral nodes, that these exist inside the containers. So they're closer to the host. They're modeled as being inside the containers. So these things are fully discovered. They are related to the rest of the world. And so you have the full detail of what's running actually inside the containers, but also we create this stable view of the software that is running inside the container, or rather it's deployed by the deployment. And this is the kind of thing that you can put into service models because it doesn't keep changing all the time. So this is quite a significant expansion of the ability of discovery to discover the details of what's running inside containers. In the past, it would have a vague stab at saying, well, it looks like maybe there's Elasticsearch running here, but it certainly wouldn't be able to collect the version, other configuration items. So it has no other configuration, but for example, a database or a Tomcat application server, you collect information about the software components or the databases. It can do all of that for software running inside containers and still build this stable view of the world, which is what it's doing for you in your environment. So there's obviously a lot more to say about deep container discovery, and now is not the time. Obviously, if people have questions, you're welcome to add them to the Q&A. Otherwise, we'll move on from this topic. But as I say, if you want a lot more detail, then you can go back and review the webinar that we did a couple of weeks ago that covers this in much more detail. So with that, I now can't see if there are any questions. So I will stop sharing. I might well share again if there's stuff to share, but we'll stop sharing and we'll talk about questions.
Okay, it's definitely prompted a few questions into the Q&A. So the first one that we had was from Saga. Saga, I don't know if you're...
Sorry to interrupt, Sam, but
oh, sorry, go on.
Tom's question is directly connected to Duncan's presentation. Could we perhaps do that?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I think that's a good idea, and it's an easy question to answer because the simple answer is yes. So the question is, would deep container discovery apply to Oracle pluggable databases running in containers? And the answer is yes. that I don't have any example data of that to show in this system I've scanned, but basically the way the deep container discovery works is anything that, if it was not running in a container, Discovery previously had the ability to interrogate various bits of software in various ways in order to deeply discover information about that. So in an Oracle database, it will tell you about pluggable databases. The same is true of other databases like Postgres that you see in containers. Things like Tomcat, we represent software components to represent all of the deployed web applications and so on. All of that information is collected by the deep container discovery and appears in both the contained software instances, which are the ephemeral things, and also in the stable software instances that are represented related to the deployments. So yes, the simple answer is yes.
Thank you.
I hope that fully answered the question.
Jeffrey, feel free to come off mute if you have any questions.
Yeah. So hello, can you hear me?
Hello. Yeah, we can. Hello.
Yeah. So now I just posed the question in the chat. So yeah, we viewed a lot of BMC Helix videos, but I think that we need a bit more information on how BMC Helix discover IP SNMP network. Our primary focus is on the connectivity. How does the Helix discover connectivity among different IP network devices like switches, routers, so on and so forth? And how do you model those connectivity in your topology?
Okay, well, maybe I'll start answering this. Other people can chip in. So, like many of the kinds of discovery that we do, there's not one single simple answer. That it's not that everything is always done the same way, but I can answer in general terms. So, as you probably know, when you drive BMC Discovery, you give it ranges of IP addresses to scan, either literally ranges as in all the addresses in a range, or give it a long list of addresses that have come from some IP management tool. And you must have credentials of some sort in order to discover these things, because you can tell very little without credentials. So if you're using SNMP, you need, well, community strings or SNMP v3 credentials in order to connect to things, and we will interrogate them. That gets you the kind of basic asset information about the network devices. But then, as you say, the network topology, the connectivity, that one of the main things that we try to do in BMC Helix Discovery for all types of discovery, not just network devices, but all types, is to work out dependencies between things. And there are two ways now that we discover that. We do layer 2 topology in the sense of, well, it's sometimes a case of Ethernet level network connectivity, where we will work out, we make use of various bits of information like LLDP information and Cisco CDP information, and a bunch of heuristics about neighbor tables for things that don't support those protocols, that basically tell you for a switch, for each switch port, in fact, how it's connected to other things. And we use that to match up against data from other network devices and also from hosts representing computers. So at a layer 2 level, we create relationships between the network interface nodes in the discovery model to say that particular network interfaces are connected to particular switch ports. And at that level, we have that layer 2 connectivity. One of the new features in the recent releases, it's hard to say because it says the 25.2 release from an on-prem point of view, and it's come out in various SaaS releases. We also now do some layer 3 discovery based on BGP. And for that, we're doing a very similar sort of a job by querying the necessary BGP tables. And from that, at an IP level, we can say that IP addresses are related to each other from a BGP peering point of view. And we do both iBGP and eBGP in terms of things, connectivity between your own devices, and also connectivity via ISP devices, so that we can represent routes from one network device you have in one of your data centers via an ISP network to another network device you have in another one of your data centers. We can represent that via the BGP information. That's a somewhat vague answer because the exact specifics depend on specific devices, and that's probably below the level here. But I hope that answered the question in general.
Yeah, thanks. Now, right. So I hear BGP, I hear LLDP. here MAC address table. So these information are very hard from the BMC document. We couldn't find it. So do you have a documented list of the different protocols that you use, especially for layer 2 discovery? Because a lot of layer 2 information are not in the public MIP. They're in vendor specific MIP. Right now, you run the first step. You use SNMP to discover a device type. Probably you use sysobject ID to identify what type of device it is. After that, I mean, are you going to vendor-specific MIP to like find layer 2 information,
yes.
or you just rely on the 3 that you just mentioned?
Are
they documented? Yeah.
There's a lot of vendor-specific behavior. There's a massive library of definitions that we know about network devices, and there's always gaps in that. There's always new devices that come along, so I can't say that every device you have will be covered, but many of them are. These things should be documented. There's a thing called the discovery content reference, which is kind of a separate part of the documentation that has a lot of detail about a lot of the devices, well, all the things that are discovered. And so I would hope you'd find much of the information you want there. But yes, the simple answer is that yes, we have a lot of device and vendor specific behavior for this, because as you say, you have to. A lot of this information, there are standard MIBs, and vendors choose not to use those. They do their own thing, and yes, that's
correct. Yeah. So what we're basically looking for documentation. Is there any? Can you point us to like where we can find those information?
Yeah, we'll provide a link to the discovery content reference that I'm hopeful that it contains the information you want.
Okay. All right. And then yeah. Okay. All right. Now, I mean, am I allowed to ask another question? Sorry. Or we'll have to wait.
Is it on the same topic?
Yeah, you can.
Paul Sagar asked a question before the meeting even started, and we haven't answered him yet, so we should get to that one.
We'll come to Saga shortly, but yes.
Go for it, Jeffrey. Okay.
Oh yeah. Now, yeah, I can be quick. So now, in large network discovery, right? I'm guessing that if it's SNMP, use SNMP, right? So do you use SNMP get bulk to like speed up the discovery?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and it's an option that we can choose, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. That's all my question. Thank you.
That was a quick one, and you can ask more questions. You're not limited to how many questions. Okay.
As long as you ask good questions, you can keep asking. Yeah. If you ask bad questions, we'll cut you off. No, that's fine. There's no bad questions.
No. So Saga's question. Saga, thank you for being patient. I've just unmuted you. Hopefully you can hear us. Do you want to ask your question to the team rather than me read it out?
Yeah. So Duncan, I asked the same question on a community 2 months back. The question went unanswered because I thought I will ask in this Q&A. Yeah. So recently we have been doing a lot of applications model using the blueprints. Okay, but we land up in a situation where the application is getting expanded because we found like there are still some hosts that are part of that application, and we are adding them. Okay, we are finding a condition and we're adding them, but the question is like, how do we decide like where should we stop creating that application further? Because if it becomes complex when we sync in the CMDB, so it becomes relatively difficult in the service monitoring to monitor the complete application. It becomes really complex. So how do we decide the approach? Where should we stop expanding that application?
That's an excellent question. There's no one single right answer. It depends on both the way you choose to see the world in terms of what do you see as being part of your applications and your services, and also, as you say, kind of pragmatic concerns in terms of you want to minimize the amount of work you need to do, and you want to not swamp your CMDB with too much information if you're synchronizing to a CMDB and so on. That there's many concerns to balance. So there's no one single right answer. But what I can do is say a thing which is a slightly obscure characteristic of the AIOps and service monitoring world, which is that for various reasons, when Helix service monitoring was first created, also known as AIOps, it was done in a way that basically it would only care about what you were doing. It would only care about events and only create situations if every single last node from Discovery's data that mattered to you was in the same service model. And that leads you into creating extremely comprehensive service models where you try to mop up everything you might ever care about. Back to the earlier conversation, that it's kind of, oh, well, I'm interested in this piece of software that's running on a host, but I might be interested in the network device that's its switch, and oh, there's a downstream switch I might be interested in, and oh, there's a storage device that might be pertinent, and it causes you to try to make these absolutely monstrously huge application or service models. And that really is a mistake. That was a mistake that was part of the AOPS design. There's a feature that I think, at least for some tenants in the SaaS world, is behind a feature switch that needs to be enabled. But there's a thing that's a slightly confusingly named thing of multi-service situations within AOPS. And what that does is it frees you from the need to put every last thing that you care about into the same service model. And it makes use of the dependency information that you've got anyway. So Discovery already knows all of these relationships. It knows how things impact each other. And the multi-service situation functionality, it means that you do not need to put everything that would ever matter to you into a service model. At which point now you can say, well, what are the things, if I went and talked to the person who owns this application or the service, what would they tell me was in it? So if it's a thing that's deployed within a Kubernetes environment, they might say everything in this namespace, that's my application. So you would just put the namespace and the associated deployments into your model, done. They might say, oh, it's this piece of software here and the database that it's talking to, and that's it. You would put just those things in your model, and the knowledge that Discovery's data has anyway about how things depend on each other would allow you to generate situations. So if you're not already using the multi-service situation functionality in AOPS, then I'd very strongly recommend you do, because that frees you from this need to put everything that you might ever care about into your services. The idea of let's make the biggest service possible, well, it's a mistake, because it causes endless trouble.
Yeah, because we got, let's say the application owner says like we have 3 servers part of that application, but when we explore Discovery, when we search, we find 5 more and we get them added. So this way the application becomes complex. So is it like the application owner should decide what important components should include, or it should be on our understanding?
Well, a bit of everything, in that, yes, often you'll need to talk to application owners because they're the people who can tell you what really matters to them. It's also there are multiple reasons for doing application and service modeling. One of them that we BMC Helix talk about a lot at the moment, because it's the kind of hot area, is the AOPS service monitoring use cases, where actually part of the answer to what do you need in your service models is which things are you monitoring and what monitoring events do you get that you care about. So that's one perspective, in terms of that if you're never going to get a monitoring event from something, maybe there's no value in having it in your service model. So that's one way of looking at it. But there's also use cases around service management. So IT service management with our ITSM product line, from a service portfolio management and a change management point of view, and things like software asset management of licensing, where you have other reasons to care about the contents of your service models. So again, it's hard to answer which things should be in your service model. It depends it depends on the consumption use cases as to what things you need. But starting from a position of being relatively minimal is a better thing than trying to be maximal. Trying to cover everything just because it leads to causing both you a lot of work to maintain it, and also the system a lot of work to build these big models. And so you have to have a very clear use case as to why you need that data before you do it.
Okay, got it. I have one more question. So let's say an application has been deployed in different environments, let's say dev, QA, production. So in that case, should we create a separate model for the application for each environment, or we should combine it with a parent over there? Because when we sync that, the parent doesn't have any root node, so it doesn't synchronize. So we have to make them as a separate application. In that case, one belongs to dev, one belongs to QA, and that's it. That is all. So what should be the right approach in that case when we get some application which is in different environments?
So when you say sync, do you mean synchronize into the CMDB?
Correct. Yeah.
So because I would certainly expect if you model a bunch of services or applications and then you put them together into a bigger one, that certainly should synchronize to the CMDB. So if it does not, that's something that should be looked into, not here in this webinar, but via support. That certainly should happen. But again, should you, leaving that aside, that sounds like a problem that can be diagnosed. Leaving that aside, the question of should you represent all of the instances, so development, production, QA, as one thing or multiple things? Well, again,
Exactly. Yes.
it comes back to the use cases that I think most customers, most users would see that you should keep them separate. So you should have separate models for these things, because it's, again, if you're in a service monitoring use case, to say this thing has broken and it affects this service. Well, something in your development instance being broken is probably much lower priority than something in your production instance being broken. And so it's generally seen as a good idea to keep the instances separate, because, well, I don't want to wake someone up in the middle of the night because the test system they've been working on last night has broken, and now it's broken in the night as well. That's okay. It's a development system. That's what it's for. So from that point of view, I think you'd want to keep them separate.
Okay. So I asked the same question, the number one, about the how much deciding the complexity. So will you be able to answer that on the community? I'm sharing the link here so that it is always on my reference. Whatever you said about the multi-service.
Yeah, that's yes. I'm sorry if that got missed. That there's a lot of stuff on the community, and it's
no worries. I was waiting
to follow that.
I will ask you the live here. So I just shared the link.
Yeah. So this will be all of the answers for these things. We'll have a write up that Sam will circulate a document that answers these things, and so it will be answered in there. But yeah, someone can go and cut and paste it.
Last question. So when we create a definition, blueprint definition, why is the restriction is limited to 3 qualifications? Like we can search only on the 3 attributes, not more than that. Like when we go in and create an application in the service editor, we get a prompt to provide a value. So why it is restricted to 3 values only, not more than that?
That's a very good question. So that user experience is developed by the AIOps team, so not the discovery team. It's available as part of discovery. The underlying capabilities in discovery, it can support any number of variables or parameters. So I believe the feeling of the developers of that was that by limiting it to 3, it just it keeps it simple enough that it makes the user experience quite simple. So it'd be interesting to hear from you, I think offline, because we've talked about this for a lot. We should move on to other questions, but it'd be interesting I'd be interested to see from you what it is you're doing that means that you want to have more than 3 parameters, because that would be useful for us to analyze it. I think that's probably the level of this.
Sure. I'll reach out to support our community in those cases, because we have already raised lots of design issues that were found, and improvements have been logged as a defect or an RFE.
Yeah. If you could do that, that would be good. But I think we should probably move on to other topics for now.
Yeah.
I think
thank you so much.
Thank you. I think next in line was Eric, I think.
Yeah. Hi, Eric. Can you hear us? Oh,
we can
got comms issues again. Yeah, go for it. So his question was, can you speak to how the last inference time is determined, and is it possible to surface that into queries if needed, and can provide a recent example where this data point was beneficial in identifying some stale data? Thanks, Eric.
Well, I guess a question is what type of a thing. So, but in general, the way that many things within Discovery's data model are represented is that we refer to inference as being that some data arrived from somewhere, so Discovery itself, or some data that came from elsewhere, and we have rules and patterns that identify what that means and infer meaning from it, hence the use of the word inference. And in general, that information is tracked within the system. There are kinds of relationships within the database called inference relationships that represent that information. And the time of last inference is stored on those relationships. So yes, you can, in a query, you can look at a node and say, what was the time of its most recent inference? I don't know if, Eric, whether you're in a position to talk and can talk more specifically about a kind of a thing you're looking at. But the simple answer is yes, you can query on that data in order to get the times out. whether you can have one single simple report that tells you exactly what you want, well, that's we need to know more specifically what it is you're trying to do. I see Eric has appeared at the top of the
I
Zoom
know.
view. We can't hear you, I'm afraid, Eric.
I've
Can you
replied
hear
to
me?
him to say, yes, we
yes.
can now. Great.
There we go. Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for the answer. And I was assuming that it was based on the inference relationships to a node. I'll try to keep the specific scenario brief, but I had a recent need for GCP data cluster records, and came into Discovery and found that we had them, and it's one scenario where nobody had ever asked for it before, and then we suddenly had a need, and great news, Discovery has it. About to pull the inventory that we have and provide that to the customer, and I go in and turn on provenance and find that these records are 10, 11 months old based on last inference. And so somehow they had become disconnected from the aging mechanisms, and troubleshoot a little bit more and find that permissions to Discover data proc were removed at some point. And so was really just, that then puts in my mind, okay, where else could we find these type of scenarios? And a lot of software instances have like the last update success attribute. These specific ones do not have that data point. So really just trying to leverage that in the tool belt to help identify records that for some reason or another may have become disconnected from the aging or not getting refreshed for whatever reason.
Yeah, okay, that does make sense. That yes, you can do that with a suitable search query that goes and gets the time out of the inference relationships. I think that's something I think. So the simple answer now is yes. I know that doesn't help you because I'm not answering the question of how. I think that what we should do is we should in the document that gets circulated to answer these questions, we'll put the search query into that document.
Okay.
It's not the kind of thing that I want to try and develop live.
Yeah,
sure.
I can imagine though, Eric, that just as you were talking, perhaps I'm leading you on this one, but would you find it useful if you were just browsing, as you were browsing the data in Discovery, looking at nodes here and there, that some indication of its freshness was present in the page you were looking at, so that you would have that information to hand as you're navigating the data?
I think it would be helpful. I mean, I do spend a decent amount of time leveraging like the time functions for creation, destruction, especially on relationships, to help understand, those type of things. And I understand that could, potentially be resource intensive, and it's available. You can pull it via the queries, but I think something there, at a minimum to say, hey, this is the last time this record was refreshed, be it a host, software, database, whatever it is, I think would be beneficial to have as a quick glance.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. As that. Yeah, as you say, a lot of this information is available in the provenance view, but I think most of the time you don't want to see all of the provenance view because, well, there's a lot of it, and mostly you don't need that. But that specific little part of it, it does make sense that maybe we should make that more visible more often.
Okay, should we move on to the next?
I think the next in time was from our anonymous attendee. I'll read the question out. So since mostly Discovery will have the most data, is it possible to see a feature where a user can easily click on a CI and automatically add a monitoring policy? So what I think that means is, we're part of, in the broader ITOM platform, you're looking at something in Discovery. I guess it would be useful to know when you're looking at something in Discovery, whether it is being monitored already or not. And as you say, having a cross link or some other cross product integration that allows you to take to the right place in the other product to set up that monitoring. I can see that being a useful enhancement. Doesn't exist today. Doesn't mean it isn't useful. And I guess we have product management here to listen to these kinds of suggestions and juggle it amongst all the other multitude of enhancement requests that we have. But is it currently possible? No. Is that a useful feature that we could add in the future? I think it could. It makes sense to me that it would be useful. The question is, when could it happen?
Yes, Andy. It was asked by me, but sorry, I had to drop in between. That's why I had to send it in anonymous. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. Because I've seen this same feature in the service monitoring, where you define the health monitoring, and then you can quickly just click on create policy, and it will just cross launch from the service monitoring to be home, and it will automatically just fill in the required data. So I thought it would be helpful to have such feature in Discovery, where we can just quickly uh, um, able to create the policy. That's one point, and just like you said, know what exactly is being monitored right now and what is not, which again will help us with uh, defining what is included and what's not included. Yeah, basically that's you've covered it completely.
Okay, thank you. No, yeah, it makes total sense.
Yeah, I think it sounds like blind spot detection for monitoring to me, right? Because we've detected some new assets, and to your point, we don't maybe understand if they're being monitored or not. Obviously, that would be primarily with BMC's AI ops tool, I think would be the expectation.
Yeah, I know we're solutioning a little bit here, but I can imagine though at some point you might want to have the ability to say, yes, I know, I don't care about that one. But
Right.
otherwise, if you keep on being represented with the same one that you don't care about. So.
Right.
But no, good topic to raise, Aslan. Thank you for the question.
I'd say put it in the ideas portal and let's do some voting on it and see what happens too.
Okay, do we want to move to the next question? Pandy, can you hear us?
Hi, Samantha.
Hello.
Good afternoon, everyone. The question is about the service monitoring. So currently using blueprint configuration to search the particular component while creating the application mapping. But we observe that we have a regular expression options and use regex conditions we can use to search the particular component which is matched based on our component name. But we do not option to exclude some component based on the filter condition. So is there any option is available to exclude the particular component from the search condition?
So, but right now, the simple answer is no, I'm afraid not. Again, this is a simplification of the user experience that was chosen by the AOps people. What you can do is, if you become a suitable expert in regular expressions, you can do a thing called a negative look ahead in a regular expression, which can act as a match everything apart from this, which is a bit inconvenient. The underlying functionality that's part of Discovery around the actual management of the service models, it can. I don't know if you've seen in Discovery, there's a visual query builder that allows you to build a graph condition to perform a search query. That you can have the full range of it must match these conditions and not that one, and so on. That it certainly provides the ability to have complex combinations of conditions, which are not currently available in the Blueprints user experience, but it's useful feedback that you would value that.
Okay.
As a future feature, then it should be possible. But you, as I say, you may be able to do what you wish with a thing called a negative look ahead in a regular expression, which is awkward.
Understand.
Possible.
Okay. Thank you, Duncan.
Thanks, Pandy. So our next question, Saga, your question was, should we only create business application into Discovery and not technical and business service? They must come from CMDB, ? For the team. And feel free to come off mute, Saga.
Well, I think the question was fairly self-explanatory. You can step in, Saga, if you need to. But I would, so should you only create applications in Discovery? Well, in the absence of any other constraints, no, we would say that you should do all of your application and service modeling in Discovery using one of the Discovery service modeling techniques, whether that's blueprints as we've been talking about, or SAM service modeling, or static models, that you can do all of these things totally in Discovery. The main reason you might wish to not do that is that some organizations, from their IT service management point of view, have very rigid fixed processes that say that service management must be done in their CMDB. Either that's the policy now, or it has been the policy in the past, and therefore there's a large a large established base of service models that were defined in the CMDB. So if you're starting fresh, should you do all of the service modeling in Discovery? I would say the answer is yes. If you've got an existing mature CMDB with existing mature processes, maybe you should stick with them. But you can also you can bridge the two in the sense that Discovery can bring the service models from the CMDB back into Discovery so they're available to AIOps, for example. But again, like we were talking about before about service modeling, there's not one single solution that's right for everyone. It depends on the way you run your business, both how it has been run in the past and how you wish to run it in the future. Did that answer? I don't know if Sagai, if you want to.
Yes, yeah.
But historically, go back many years, and again, for historical reasons, the only thing that you could model in Discovery was an application, and therefore we strongly encourage people to model services in their CMDB and their ITSM. But that restriction was taken away probably, I don't know, 5 years ago, more than that, because it was kind of a historical legacy of how things have been thought about in the past. But these days, we would say do all of the service modeling in Discovery if there's not a reason. If there's an external reason not to, then fine. But if in the absence of any other good policy reason, we would say do all of the modeling in Discovery because it has the most powerful tools for doing that.
I think we've got someone raising a hand. Yeah. George, can you hear us? Hello? I can see you've raised your hand.
Yes, I can hear you. I just got off. I've got some simple questions. The last topic Duncan was on was about modeling everything in Discovery. And, one thing I run into sometimes is, trying to model SaaS components into a service model that's not discovered. Have you guys come up with any best practices or any kind of capabilities to help us with those types of scenarios?
I'm hesitant to answer this because right now the answer is no. There's not really a good answer to that. But we do have some work and some plans and some ideas of how we would want to represent that kind of as you say, SaaS services. So you mean full on SaaS,
Salesforce or
exactly
the other big SaaS,
exactly those kinds of things where you would never ever discover them because they're not yours to discover. We do have some thinking around how we would want to represent that, how we would want to integrate that into service models, but right now that's kind of out of scope for what Discovery currently does.
That's kind of like maybe put dummy CI into the CMDB or something like that, maybe.
Exactly. And we have thoughts and ideas around that, but in these kinds of calls we can't talk about futures too much, and so that's why I'm being somewhat vague. But it is something that we're certainly aware of the desire from people to do that, and have some thoughts about how that should be done. But right now, yes, I'm afraid we don't have a good answer to that.
Yeah. I can't wait for that answer to come out. One more thing. I think about 3 or 4 years ago, Duncan, you were at one of the BMC events, and
oh dear, you're going to remind me something.
There's a little global search box up in the upper right-hand corner, and you were doing some kind of syntax in there to pull together some really cool queries, and I can't remember them, and I can't find anything on them anywhere. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Possibly.
Is it the thing about prefixing, restricting it to a particular node kind, like with host colon and SR colon?
Yeah.
I assume that's what you mean. Yes. Yeah. So this is a thing. Let me work out how to share again, because that will be the easiest way to do it. And let me. Is it sharing? It's very slow. Zoom seems to be eating all of my CPU, which means that when I try and share something that isn't Zoom, it's very slow to do. So when the user experience here seems slow, that's because my laptop is slow, not because the product is slow. So yeah, I think the thing you're talking about is that there are, in fact, if I go away, there's a very terse tooltip. I hope you can see my tooltip that it says enter individual words, phrases like this in quotes, or try host : a host name. So there are several things that are that are available here. So one of them, so just because it's on the screen, if I type Elasticsearch here, so I was looking at an Elasticsearch thing. If I just do a general purpose search for Elasticsearch, then honestly, I don't know what I'm going to find, and nothing is what I'm going to find because my laptop's what? Okay, I must have typed it wrong.
You missed the T in Elastic.
Okay, that would explain it. Right, okay, so happily I found many things. So that was just a general purpose word search, and it found many results, which in this case it wasn't so many that I couldn't have them, and it's showing me the most likely things that it thinks I probably want. But there are some things you can type where I can, for example, sticking with the example of deep container discovery, we have a thing called contained software instance. So I can type contained software instance : Elastic search, and I know it will find some because I was looking at some before, and in fact they're on the screen. I still can't type. What did I do?
You missed the T again. The joy of demonstration.
I need you on my team, Adam.
This is Adam's function. When he says he's a developer, he's a spelling helper in the team. So you see that found me only contained software instances that match this. But that was really long to type, and I got it wrong. So there's also a bunch of abbreviations. So I can say like CSI for contained software instance. I should have chosen.
I wonder if somebody could put together like a little knowledge article or something like
so,
that.
So this is documented, but it's very well hidden in the documentation.
I was going to say, if you can ask a question in the chat, I can paste a link. That's documentation.
If I say,
George.
So if I search for host, I don't think I'm going to find anything Elastic. But if I search for a host where I think I've got like in this system, I've got some of our ancient demo data, and I know that some of the hosts have MCR as part of the name. So if I search for host : MCR, then I'm pretty sure I will find some host nodes that involve MCR somewhere in them. Although, interestingly, this one, it's not in its host name. It must be somewhere else in its data. So there's a bunch of these abbreviations that you can do in here. You can also.
That was a little more expensive what you showed us at the event, but this is good.
So
I thought you were showing all kinds of some pretty sophisticated type of things.
The only other thing that you can do in this little search box is what I'm about to do, which is a phrase search. So if I search for BMC Discovery as a phrase in quotes, then honestly, I'm not sure what it's going to find. I'm sure it'll find some instances of BMC Discovery, but that's now looking for it won't. If I just do BMC, if I do BMC Discovery on its own, then that means find nodes where an attribute contains both BMC and Discovery, but not necessarily right next to each other. And so if you, well, I don't know how many things I'm going to find. It will find more things, I expect. But so you can do a phrase search there. Yeah, so now you see I've got a lot more results than I had because I didn't pin it down to they had to be next to each other. So you can do that. That's about all you can do in this little search box. Obviously, then there's, well, there are two. Oh, the other thing you can do is you can change some options. I'm not sure anyone ever does these things that you can search in only particular bits of the data, and you can do an exact match, which I struggle to see why you would actually want to do that in the quick search. So that sort of covers it. But then, of course, there's the good old generic search query, which you can also get where you now you need to learn the search language. You can type all sorts of complicated things here. And we've also got the visual query builder, which was introduced a few releases ago, which lets you graphically find things. So that this allows you to kind of draw a graph where I can say, okay, I want hosts where the operating system contains the word Linux, and also I want it to be related to a software instance where I don't know, the type contains Tomcat or something like that. So I can you can build you can graphically build a query this way, which is much more powerful than a quick search thing, but obviously it's not as quick as the quick search. So those are all the things I can think of that I could usefully show.
I think one thing, George, maybe you're referring to, but by the way, if you ask a question in the Q&A, we can put a post to the link in the docs that lists those abbreviations and prefixes that Duncan just showed. We can give that for others to see. But the search language is very powerful and it's documented, and you can do some really quite clever things with it. And it's worth having a look at that. And depending on your use case, if you really want to roll your sleeves up and get to know the search language, you can do some incredibly powerful things.
Yeah.
I mean,
which I'm sure you, but other people.
Yeah, no, I just remember that. I can fumble around and make some pretty nice queries, but every once in a while I get into something a little trickier.
Yeah, so certainly the quick search thing, it's the only real thing that is the ability to put a node kind either directly or as an abbreviation that is quite a handy thing, especially if you've got a very large, if you've got a search term that is not very unique in the sense that it gets a lot of hits and you know what kind of node you want, then it can be much faster, both for the system to do and for you to then find the thing you wanted if you specify the node kind in the search. So I use that all the time.
Okay, yeah. One last question. Does your organization own the discovery for ZOS? Is that under your purview, or is that the mainframe team?
That's an excellent question. As I assume you're aware, that the company is in the process of splitting into two, to BMC Helix and BMC, and the mainframe, all of the mainframe business of BMC as was belongs to the company that's now called BMC. So not our bit, not the BMC Helix bit. And the same is true of the mainframe discovery functionality. That remains a product from BMC software as opposed to BMC Helix, but it's a co-sold thing in the sense that it hasn't gone away, and we will still sell it to you. It's just it then becomes a slightly tricky transaction in terms of the interaction with BMC.
Yeah, I have a couple of people I work with that have mainframes, and I've had a couple of things come up, and I really haven't been able to get good answers. You know, like one customer wants to be able to inventory all the software, right? So all the IBM products and all the CA products. I wasn't really sure how to answer that or find the information or the answers. And then there's another customer I have that's got Splunk, and they're modeling applications that span across distributed and mainframe, and it looks like software instances, kind of the same sort of thing with relationships. I know a couple of years ago something was added to create relationships between mainframe components and distributed discovery components. I'm not sure from a service modeling perspective what's available, because I haven't done a lot with the mainframe discovery.
I mean, from a service modeling perspective, it's just a case of deciding what's in your model, and if you have relationships between distributed and mainframe, then that can be a means by which you include something in the model or not, or whatever. So yeah, what you're talking about there is, I think, the observed communication relationship building that used to be within the distributed world and was extended to also do observed comms from distributed to mainframe, and that's just there.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of things we can do in distributed, like if there's a candidate software instance, you can model that and then pull that into a model. I don't know if you can do that on the mainframe. there may be, what is discovered on the mainframe. I know DAS-Ds and, sysplexes and all the MF parts. I looked at the MF part CDM map, and I get a little bit of an idea there. And then I looked at the content reference for the mainframe, and it's just, it seems, I don't want to say vague, but
you can say
not real detailed or specific. So when I look at the Splunk diagram, and they've got IBM product that's talking to a product out in the distributed world, maybe like an MQ connection or a KIX, something through a KIX gateway or what. And how do you model those kinds of? Is there somebody out there that might be able to or is there some documentation somewhere that I'm not seeing that I can get some more knowledge on the topic?
I think George. Yeah, I know, because I know we're at the top of the hour here too. I think George, maybe we could just follow up offline and get some people in touch with you so we could dive a little deeper into some of these mainframe questions. They're good. Yeah.
Sorry for hogging all the time. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Good questions.
Hey, do we want to take Eric's last question if we've got a few minutes, and then we can wrap up?
Yeah, let me quickly answer Eric's question, which is about provenance information. In that, is it possible to, in a query, to query the provenance of attributes? And the answer is yes. There are, well, all of the information is stored on the inference relationships, and you can go and mine it directly. There are also some search language functions that allow you to get that information in that you can say, what's the provenance of this attribute name? Again, in the document that we circulate after that, we'll put a search query that can do that for you. However, the specific thing you're asking, Eric, is about an attribute called actual health, which is stored on a node, and you're wondering where that came from. Now, that actually you will find has no provenance, because I can tell you where that came from, which is that it came from BMC Helix service monitoring. So Helix service monitoring, it largely consumes data out of Discovery's data. So it consumes the service models, but it also writes some information back into Discovery's data using Discovery's API, and the things to do with health that you'll see, things to do with health score and actual health and impacted attributes, those are being set externally to Discovery. They're being set by AOps service monitoring, and therefore there is no provenance, as in where in Discovery's data did it come from? Well, it didn't. It came from outside. So that answers that question. There's a naming convention around attributes that it should use, but unfortunately does not. And so it is slightly obscure as to where that data comes from, but it comes from service monitoring is the answer.
Okay. Yeah, I did assume that was monitoring related just based on the data that was stored in that attribute, but was curious, because you can go in and see, effectively any attribute, and why is Discovery showing this value? Okay, it was a pattern or a piece of DVD that supported that. So was looking, curious if that could be done at a deeper level.
Well, it can be done for anything that was created internal to Discovery, but as I said, sadly that was not. So it won't be able to tell you, because it didn't come from anywhere in Discovery. It came from outside.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably a good time to say we're ready to close, but really good questions. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to the panelists today. Just a reminder for those, I know we've got global customers on right now. We are going to be running a user group in London. So if you are based in London, you're going to be coming to the roadshow, you'll get an opportunity to meet with this team that's on this call today. If you are going to any of the other locations, we've got Mumbai coming up in August. There will be various different people from BMC there. We're still determining where we're also going to do user groups. A lot of it will be to see how we get on in London. We've also got Brian, one of our product managers, that's on today. He will be at the New York. So at the very least, there'll be a few people from the Discovery team to meet. If you haven't already signed up, these are the dates. I know that it's available for London, Mumbai and Melbourne. I will share out the link for anyone that is still looking to sign up for the roadshow.